that, yeah, when I'm worried about Islam and a couple billion of them and their expansionist Quran, and they say when they come in, they always take over, and they're allied with the left to colonize, and we had the Crusades were a response to 500 years of their attacks. That's historical fact. I see this, oh, you're with the Jews, and I'm like, no, I'm with the West.
In this particular clip, Alex Jones challenges Nick Fuentes over what he deems as an overreaction to anti-Islam sentiments, saying that he's attacked for being controlled opposition when he finds both lobbies bad. Nick Fuentes responds.
But all I'm getting at here is your audience, okay, which I don't pretend to fully track or understand all of it. All I'm saying is I see this from the really woke patriot, people that think if there's a bird falls out of the sky, the Jews did it, and I'm a Jew and everything's a Jew and magic Jew, this and that, and I never expose, all that made up because they want to be holier than thou. I'm not saying you, but they want to be only the best and nobody else is good but them, and everybody, it's its own thing. That, yeah, when I'm worried about Islam and a couple billion of them and their expansionist Quran, and they say when they come in, they always take over, and they're allied with the left to colonize, and we had the Crusades were a response to 500 years of their attacks. That's historical fact. I see this, oh, you're with the Jews, and I'm like, no, I'm with the West. And if you don't, and I see a lot of the Jewish lobby and the rest of it, and bringing in the foreigners and being involved, Mayorkas and all of it. So I see all of that is out of control. The ADL saying arrest anybody that talks about replacement migration. They were all pro-Islam coming in until October 7th, and they flipped. But I'm just saying, what would you like to say to the section of anti-Israel people that have now embraced Islam and think it's a good thing?
I don't know if that's a huge element. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, you said you got flack for saying the mullahs are, not nice guys.
Well, because you have to keep in mind that there is intense censorship on this issue, and anybody that criticizes Jews or Israel gets nuked from orbit. And I think that's why there might be people that overcompensate on the other side. Because in some sense, I agree with you to the extent that there are people that say, oh, Jack Black is a Jew. You can't see the Minecraft movie, which I did legitimately see some people saying that kind of stuff. But you have to recognize, I think that's marginal, and you have to recognize also where it comes from. When there's this intense censorship, you then get this equal and opposite reaction. If you tell people there are no legitimate criticisms of Israel, there are no you don't do that, but you recognize, because you've called out the Liberty and 9/11 and these things, there are people that say, if you call out these issues, you have been canceled. I mean, you and I, we're sort of in the same cancellation boat. They say, if you criticize Jews in Israel, you are an evil, hateful person, there's something wrong with you, and so on. And I think that's why you get a little overcompensation.
No, I totally agree. I just wanted to get that on record and to go back to the point I interrupted you on. But let me take Steve Witkoff. Jewish, great guy, pro-peace. People that know him, really loving guy. I know so many Jews that are really loving people. Some of them are so pro-Islam, and I mean, a lot of them, and you go to these pro-Islam rallies, these pro-Palestinian rallies, like a third of them are leftist Jews. So my issue with the whole Jewish thing is the Likudniks, that whole movement, the Sabbateans, all that, and funding communism, and the 100,000, Jews out of New York and the East Coast going to overthrow the czars, and then the Lenin, the persecution of the Christians. There was a huge Holocaust. I mean, for real, 20 million conservative. And then Stalin was a bad guy, but because he got rid of Lenin and he killed him, folks, poisoned him. That's why he was seen as a savior, kicking Trotskyites and the Commissars out. So I've got the history there, and I talk about it. My issue is then when I criticize China, that's got spies all over the place and making major moves and transhumanism and all things. People are like, oh no, China's not an issue. China's heavily allied with Hollywood, funding the wokeism to divide our country. And so just because Israel does bad stuff, it has some big problems, and Netanyahu, as far as I'm concerned, is the devil, and we could probably end the world. He'd certainly like to. Direct strings, I think, right to hell. But China, I just want to get people to get a wider view of all this. Is my point.
I agree with you. I think there are other adversaries. I think the reason people pay special attention to Israel and the Jewish dimension to all this is because it is something that is concealed, that's hidden. I think that, we both recognize if there was like a big Chinese firm or a big Russian firm pouring money into American politics and influencing us, I think both sides could reasonably say, we don't want an adversary manipulating our country. This is horrible, and so on.
No, I get it. So you're saying that the Streisand effect is so strong. And you're right. Even Joe Rogan said that. I saw you talk about it. Maybe you can repeat that. That He said, look, you can say anything you want about anybody, especially white people or Christians, but you can't talk about this. Wow, whoever you can't talk about is,
Quite a lot was made mention there, but here are my 3 takeaways. This would be my first takeaway. The anti-Islam overreaction. I see things from both of their perspectives, and I do agree with Alex Jones broadly that the Islamic influence in this country is growing at an extremely alarming rate, so much so forth that you can actually already see certain regions being manipulated by such. And this goes a step further than what the basic illegal immigration does in terms of changing the fabric of society. Especially for myself, who views this country to be, or once was, a Christian nation, and as somebody who wants to maintain that, that definitely is alarming to see. Now, on the other hand, I also agree with Fuentes when he says it was bound to happen. This is a natural overcompensation due to the intensity of strength of which the other side is obfuscated or concealed, especially in terms of, the critical nature of which, if you were to criticize said Israel lobby or criticize Judaism, you are going to be painted in a certain light, and as he says it, nuked from orbit. I see both sides here, and I largely do agree with both of them on the aspect of there are just in general bad actors, but I do think that when you do have an exceptional amount of censorship, it's likely you will get an overt overcompensation in terms of seeing anti-Islamic posts. People start looking and going, hey, where's your anti-Israel post? I know who you're being paid by. And thus, rightfully so, you get the social fabric we have right now. The second takeaway, and maybe the most important takeaway, would be the fact that criticizing Israel does not equal anti-Semitism, no matter how hard they may make everyone try to believe that is the case. And that's exactly what we are seeing. If you criticize Israel for its actions, or you criticize the leadership of Israel, or you criticize the military actions of Israel, it is as if people are reacting as if you have just made a blanket statement on all Jews and it was dripping with hatred. That is simply not a healthy dynamic to have conversations. And like they'd mentioned previously, these individuals who do have the cojones to go so far as to criticize Israel are painted in a light as if they are the most hateful beings of all time. This leads to this push, this continual kind of toxic nature to the conversation, to which, if you're not familiar with what's going on, and you trust the individuals who you're taking your information from, say Fox News, Jesse Waters, Charlie Kirk, and they also agree, oh yeah, I don't listen to that person, they're an anti-Semite, it paints everyone in such a bad light that a lot of people who are more concerned about their bottom dollar decide, hey, how about we just don't talk about this because I want to avoid the kind of vitriol it will bring, and thus the problem continues. And my third takeaway would be the fact that the Streisand effect is undefeated. This is something I've made note of for quite some time and for a very long time. The Streisand effect, put quite simply, is the fact that the more that you try to hide something or keep it out of purview that no one can see it, the more that people demand to see it. This was exhibited with Barbra Streisand with a particular photo of hers. I'd have to put it on screen to let you know the exact details. But the same thing takes effect here as it pertains to Israel in the critical sentiments that people have of it, which is to say, the more that the public and Fox News, the GOP, the Republicans, and even some of the Democrats as well, try to shield people from seeing full truths or shield full dialogue, full discussions, without painting individuals in bad lights, without shutting it down, if you will, right? Hence the term, they got the call, right? Oh, he got the call, he shut the conversation down. It makes people have to go out on limbs to find things off of, third-party Temu websites, right? We're talking like, this is why people go to Rumble to talk about these things. This is why these people go to Gab and all these other platforms. And then you begin to lose a little bit of the ethos that YouTube has. And perhaps many of these individuals may find themselves listening to somebody who might actually be a hateful individual and isn't giving someone the full picture. This is why the Streisand effect needs to be studied in high school. This is why I am a First Amendment and free speech absolutist. You cannot expect that you can hide and shutter one side of the conversation and not expect there to be negative fallout and backlash. It's very basic. And we see this with almost any kind of, topic you try to involve censorship over outside of that, which falls under obscene and graphic. And if I was to have a broader takeaway, or maybe a more conclusive takeaway, it would be that in the wake of what many are calling, again, this false flag operation, of which I am not stating it is or is not, but at least letting you know objectively, people are saying that's their belief of what this is. And you see the reaction of Alex to pull in Nick Fuentes literally a day after this event, as well as other co-hosts like Harrison Smith and others, saying feels very, very, very much like this is all being done in an effort to drag the United States of America into war with Iran. This is obviously bad and something that we shouldn't be doing. But at the end of that, what you do get is the fact that Alex said it himself. What used to be a very, very underground and lowly talked about, everyone hush hush, you say anything about this, you're gone, you're fired, you get kicked out, banned, whatever. The conversation is moving to the mainstream, if it hasn't already. Many, many people are talking about it. So much so that many individuals' favorite creators like Tim Pool have developed terms like Israeli derangement syndrome, and they try to find random reasons for why they're not going to have full-blown discussions about these things, or why they won't invite certain individuals to talk about these things. There comes a point in which, when the comment section is loaded full of comments saying, why haven't you talked about this? Why isn't this a subject? It forces even the biggest creators at some point to acknowledge the reality of which people want this subject discussed, or if you choose to ignore it, you're going to lose credibility. And that's basically what we're seeing, is many mainstream people getting their hands forced to talk about this in a way that they otherwise wouldn't have 5 years ago. And I think that, by virtue of free speech, is a victory. It shows the Overton window is moving. And I would like to also credit largely X as the platform for being the one that drove most of this. I do also thank Rumble for being the outlet host many people could go and flee to. But at the end of the day, I think X, being the much more mainstream platform and vehicle for this, has been the driver to push for things to be talked about that otherwise 5 years ago you would have had to have logged on to some random, Onion website to get a hold of. And with that, that's my conclusion. Let me know what you guys think. I found this clip in particular to be pretty interesting and intriguing, especially given the fact that Alex is fearless when it comes to hosting Nick Fuentes. This is about his third visit in what seems like 2 or 3 months. And it's a good thing to see. It's nice to see when other creators lend themselves over and say, hey, I know you're banned. And especially for Alex, who's been literally nuked himself off of platforms, that he would bring on another individual and say, hey, let's discuss, let's use my platform. But again, let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to know what everyone's thoughts are about this conversation, especially as it moves much more to the mainstream. And we'll see how YouTube interacts with this as well. And definitely, too, smash the like button if you made it this far. It helps my channel tremendously. And if you are interested, we do run the Jar Opener podcast. And so if you want to see some more of our live conversations on air, definitely follow the Jar Openers. And I will see you guys in the comments. Take care.